Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon's session. Put your headphones on if you've got them. Can everyone hear me all right? Give me a big wave right now if you can't hear me. Someone can't hear me. Can you hear me? All right. We're good. My name's Victoria Turk. I'm a senior editor at Wired magazine, and I am delighted to be joined today by 4 people from the music industry. We've got Ali Gillani and J.Edward from Bandcamp over here. Give us a wave. Fabien Gouyon from Pandora, and Marco Selvi from Jukedeck.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone. Now, this afternoon's session is called Music Industry Intelligence, and we are going to be talking about several different types of intelligence: artificial intelligence and human intelligence, with a focus on music discovery, which is obviously a key tenet to digital musical platforms, and for many of us is a major way in which we discover new music that we like, or maybe reacquaint ourselves with some old favorites as well. So we're going to be hearing a lot about algorithms and AI, and also some good old-fashioned curation. Now, the way the session is going to work, we're going to start with presentations from each of the companies represented here today. They've got 15 minutes each to tell you a bit about what they're doing and how they approach music discovery. Then we're going to have a panel discussion with everyone, and there will also be some time for you guys to ask your own questions to the panel members. We're not going to be stopping in between the presentations, so if you do have a question that you think of when someone's giving their presentation, just make a note of it or file it away in your brain to ask at the end, and we will give you a chance to ask it then. Okay, so without too much further ado, let's kick off with our first presentation, which is going to be Bandcamp. So Ali and J.Edward, do you want to tell people a bit more about who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Can you all hear me okay? Good. All right. So yeah, my name's Ali Gillani. I'm the European label representative for Bandcamp, and I have with me J.Edward, who's our editorial director, also at Bandcamp by an amazing coincidence. What we're going to do is tell you a little bit about who we are, what Bandcamp does, and then talk about some of the ways in which we enable music discovery for fans. So first up, just some basic stuff about Bandcamp. Bandcamp, as you can see from behind me just there, is a thriving global music community where fans discover new artists, intimately connect with them, and directly compensate them for their work. How that works, there's a few elements just here. First up, we were founded in 2008. We've been profitable as a company since 2012. That's actually something that's really important to us as a company. The whole ethos of Bandcamp was to help make artists self-sufficient. So it was actually very important for our founders that we were self-sufficient too. Since we launched, fans have paid artists $300 million. That's $6.6 million in the last 30 days. We actually just went over that $300 million mark just today, which is cause for celebration. We're currently selling around 36,000 records every single day. That's roughly 1 record every 2.5 seconds. And we have almost 4,000 labels that have joined the site now as well. More than 600,000 artists have sold something on Bandcamp, and we're onboarding 100,000 new fans per month to use our our fan accounts, more of which later on. One other nice thing that I like to share to sort of sum up what we do at Bandcamp. Bandcamp serves as an honest-to-goodness, proof-in-the-pudding bulwark against the creep of artistic monoculture fueled by the consolidation of digital life into the hands of a few companies. Maybe the future isn't a dumpster fire after all, which is a fun quote, because what I like about that is there's some very English language and some very American language in there, which makes me smile. So when we started out, the company really was created to enable artists to sell their music direct to a fan. If one of you had an album you wanted to sell, we would give you a site to enable you to do that, taking a small revenue cut for providing the service. As the company grew, we then found people were just coming to us to find new music, so we started developing some discovery tools. Now, in developing those, we made a decision that rather going down the algorithmic route, the discovery options that people would find at Bandcamp would be human-based. So I'm just going to show you how that can work. So music discovery on Bandcamp, we have our genre pickers. If you go to our front page, you can click on a genre, you can click on a location, you can even click on a format that you particularly like, and you can find some music, whether it's best-selling or artist recommended, etc. Some other ways that we kind of dial down on that. We really recently launched this recommendations footer. So anyone who's bought something on Bandcamp, you see at the top, there's the pack shot, and you can play the tracks. If you scroll down, you see this screen just behind me here. If you look along the top there, it says Sarah Williams White recommends, and there's a couple of releases just there. Every artist on Bandcamp can recommend up to 3 albums that will appear in this spot. So it's a chance for you to recommend music from friends of yours, maybe collaboration albums that you've done that are on different labels that fans might not otherwise see. But we found it's a really nice way. I think fans really like to know what the artists that they love are into themselves. So it's a nice little bit of kind of free advertising space, I guess, for artists to share music that they love. The rest of the screen up there, as you scroll over, if you like Sarah Williams White, you may also like. So the first 2 spots on that are actually items which fans who bought the release you're looking at also bought this release. So it's very much based on what fans are buying and what they're into. And then at the end, we have a couple of spaces reserved for items in the same genre that we have covered in the Bandcamp Daily, which is our editorial offering, which J.Edward's going to cover in more detail in a few minutes. I mentioned fan accounts before. So this is a fan account. There's me looking happy in the sunshine many years ago. A fan account, when you buy something on Bandcamp, you can either just buy it and you download it, and that's that. If you wish to create a music collection on the site, this is what it looks like. It's kind of like the old-fashioned record collection, but in the digital world. And the idea is that other fans can then follow you. So I can see here, these are people that are following me. That means that once a week, they get an email that looks a little bit like this, which rounds up all the fans that they're following and what music they've been buying in the week. So it's a social network of sorts, but a social network where you don't have to share a photo of your breakfast or tell people how you're feeling that day or what you think about global politics. You just have to buy music that you love. And further to that, if someone then buys something off of your recommendation, you get an email saying a virtual high five and/or fist bump to you. This person just bought the following item after discovering it via your recommendation. So it's a really nice, you get a nice feeling that you have shared something that you love with a fellow music fan. So it's a kind of social media of sorts, and one that actually, through the social functions of our site, it actually accounts for 33% of sales across the site. So it's a massive thing. But not only is it a social network of not just people who like music, but people who are prepared to pay for music, which is a very specific and unique thing that we do at Bandcamp. That's kind of that side of things. I'm now going to hand over to J.Edward Keys to talk to you about Bandcamp Daily.
All right. Hey, so simply put, Bandcamp Daily is 4 editors and about 50 freelance writers who are stationed all over the world. We've got writers everywhere. And our job is to cover the world of Bandcamp, to write about the artists who are using Bandcamp to get their music out into the world. We have been doing this for 2 years. In fact, we launched 2 years ago today, in 2016. And what we've discovered about our audience since we launched Bandcamp Daily is that they are extremely curious. I'm fond of saying that if you asked a Bandcamp user what their favorite musical genre is, their response would be whatever genre I discover next. They don't have any preconceived ideas. They don't want to hear more of the same thing that they've heard before. They want to discover something new. So the challenge for us as Bandcamp's editorial staff and Bandcamp Daily's editorial staff is to find that new thing, to write about it, to profile it, and to share it with them. So since we launched 2 years ago, we've been able to cover music scenes all over the world. We've covered the electronic underground scene in Iran. We've covered the emo scene in Asia. We've covered the dance scene in Lisbon, Portugal. We did a piece on extratone, which is the world's fastest musical genres. That's albums with songs that are 10,000 BPM and higher. That's not an exaggeration. And what we discovered as we put these pieces out there is our audience loves this. So Bandcamp Daily's been around for 2 years, and I'm happy to say that in 2017, Bandcamp Daily's readership was up 83% over where it was in 2016. And in 2018, our readership is still on the increase. So we believe there's a real hunger out there for people who want to discover music that's outside the mainstream, that's a little bit beyond what they hear all the time. And that's what we do at Bandcamp Daily. So what I thought I would do is actually in real time show you how one of our stories on Bandcamp Daily came into existence and how the editorial team uses Bandcamp to discover music and to share it with everybody. So let's see if I don't completely mess this up.
Escape.
Oh yeah, I'm so good at technology. Okay, so this is the Bandcamp homepage. And right up top here you see that's where all the stories on Bandcamp Daily live. So one day our editorial team was browsing through this section of Bandcamp, which is the Discover section. This is where we can see new arrivals, what albums are best-selling, what things are added to the site. And you have to remember, anybody, anywhere, in their bedroom, at any point in time, can upload an album, add it to Bandcamp, and it shows up in new arrivals. So we were looking through here one day, and this album in the best-selling section was lodged at the top spot for 2 or 3 days in a row. And finally, one of our editors turned around and said, "Who is this guy, Irang? He's been in the top spot of best-selling every single day." So here he is, Irang's The First Age. So we looked at this page, and immediately it looked kind of interesting to us. So we decided, let's give it a play, and let's see if the audio works. And this is what we heard. So we're like, all right, sure. So it kind of proceeds that way. So then we decided, the editorial team did a little bit more digging. We found Irang's homepage. And there he is. And what we found is that he has put together a map of all of his albums. They all exist within this world. So now the whole editorial team in New York is like, okay, what's going on here? So we went back to Irang's album page. And the cool thing about Bandcamp is that at the bottom of every album page, there's tags. And they're genre tags. So we went through these first genre tags. Atmospheric black metal, we'd all heard of before. Metal, ambient, we'd all heard. But then we saw this tag, dungeon synth. I'm like, wait, what is dungeon synth? So your initial reaction is, okay, cool, that's fine. So you can click on this, and you can see all the artists who've tagged their music dungeon synth. So that's what the editorial team did. And all of a sudden, we realized that there was a story here. Because not only are all these albums dungeon synth, there are 10+ pages full of albums that have been tagged dungeon synth on Bandcamp. So we found a writer that we thought would be good. We sent him over this. We said, descend into the dungeon and bring back what you find. And he returned with a guide through the darkened passages of dungeon synth, which is a piece that we ran on Bandcamp Daily about all of these dungeon synth bands. And there's a lot. Now, this would be one thing if this was just like a quirky little fun piece that we did. 2 years on, a guide through the darkened passages of dungeon synth is far and away our most read story on Bandcamp Daily. It was so successful that this past year, we published Dungeon Synth 2, Back to the Dungeon, because there were still people who wanted to know about this. Now, this is something that before I started working at Bandcamp, I didn't know much about dungeon synth. Probably a lot of the people who read this story didn't know much about dungeon synth. But we put it together in a way that we thought was smart, funny, and put it in front of people. And lo and behold, people keep coming back to the story again and again and again. We probably won't do Dungeon Synth 3, because I think that's getting a little craven. But my point with all of this is the editorial team and the writers all do this every single day. And this is a little bit of an odd scene that I thought would be fun to share, but there's really vital and important musical scenes, as I'm sure I don't need to tell people in this room, that are happening all over the world. And that's our job, and that's what we do. And we put it in front of people, and hopefully they fall in love with it, and they buy it. That's it.
Great, thank you very much, guys. Well, we'll move on straight to our next presentation then, which is Fabien from Pandora. And I believe you're going to be talking a bit about how Pandora applies machine learning and recommendation systems, and also some good old-fashioned human ears to bring people the music that they want to hear.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? What about the slides? It is working. All right. Right. So first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm super happy to be here with you all. My name is Fabien Gouyon. I work at Pandora, head of research in Europe. Today, I thought, after what after the topic that's been proposed, I thought I would talk about how changes in the music industry, and in particular the fact that streaming just took over pretty much, how music discovery changed with that. So first of all, a few slides, because I'm a few numbers. I'm a scientist after all. So what you can see in the bottom, on the top one, what it says revenue. If you compare the red and the orange, what you see is that it's really just a demonstration that streaming is really now the biggest way people where people get music from. People don't buy so much music in a physical form so much. A lot is through streaming. But now if you look at the bottom one, it's about how people spend their time listening to music. Then you see that the red one is actually not so big. I mean, they do spend some time listening to music on streaming, but the blue one kind of jumps to your face here. And what is this one? It is radio, like good old terrestrial radio. So that's from 2016. That might have changed a bit, but still. The point here is that, the point I wanted to make and to bring forward here is that what I see in this is that people still want, in the age of streaming, people are still very much interested in discovery and in lean-back experiences. So having said this, I wanted to go a bit on explaining how the music listening experiences changed with the arrival of streaming. So you'd have this old-fashioned model of what you would call the ownership model, where you have a very clear distinction between the discovery part and the consumption part. Discovery would be mainly through radio. That's where people would discover new things, and then they go ahead and they buy it. And once they buy it, pretty much that's on them to define the way they want to consume it. So if you're from the point of view of the publisher or the distributor of the music, once people have discovered and bought the music, your job is done. It's on them to consume it the way they want. But now things change with the arrival of streaming, which is that, in particular because now discovery and consumption go on the same media. So not only people discover music on streaming platform, but they also actually demand, they also want those platforms to guide them through how to consume it in time. And that's very important because that's how, that's in my opinion where kind of all the innovation is happening. From this discover and own model to the access model. We don't really know what access is. We don't really know what experience is. This is being defined as we speak by a lot of streaming platform, so that's where really we're trying to bring some innovation. And here, one interesting point, or one I think crucial point, is really try to strike the right balance between lean-back experiences, where you just let the platform do, just say play, and you let the platform do whatever is good for you, but also being able to lean in and, edit your playlists and all of that. So I want to give you one example of a streaming platform, which is Pandora. Pandora is a music streaming platform that exists in the US since 2005. It's not available yet in Europe. It's not available yet here. But we have a number of different products. So one is, you can see like on the left side, one is ad-supported, just radio, personalized radio. We'll say a bit more on this in a bit. And it goes up to the complete full on-demand lean-in experience product. All right. So radio stations. What we do on radio stations and how we personalize it is important because it's common to all the tiers of products that we propose. So it's relatively simple. The user can just pick for an artist, in this case St. Vincent, or maybe what do I have here? I have Foo Fighters, or you can choose a song. Paris is Burning is a song by St. Vincent, or a composer, a genre. You can just seed the system with that. And then what we're going to do is to start a constant music flow. You don't know what's coming next, but things are coming next, right? And then what you can do is thumb up, thumb down, skip, do these kind of things, change stations, and depending on your feedback, we will adapt what we're going to play to you next. So it's a constant music flow where the question we have to answer to all our users at all times is, okay, what is the next best track that we should play? So if it's on a St. Vincent station, if me and Veronica start a St. Vincent station right now, in a couple of hours it will be different. Maybe I'm going to have more Coldplay, maybe she's going to have more Feist. That's going to be different depending on the feedback that we give. So that's about one end of the spectrum, which is radio. The other side is more toward the on-demand thing. Of course, we have. So those playlists are only available for listeners who are registered and who, in opposition to the other one, where it's free, basically. So on this one, of course, we have playlists that our in-house curators do put together. Like you'd say, for rap, we have that playlist that's called The Sauce, and it's all the cool new hip hop that's coming up. But we have that for many genres. But we did that one step further in the sense that we wanted to have this more personalized. So if you think of the type of playlist that people tend to make, it can be about a genre, it can be about an activity for workout or for chilling. It can be about a mood. Rainy day, I guess, is more about a mood. And then, so what we do with that is we depending on the behavior and the type of music that every single listener has, we decide what is relevant in terms of what genre is relevant to that user. So for me, I would have an indie rock playlist, which we call Soundtrack, but that only appears to me and other people who are into indie rock. If you're not into indie rock, we're not going to propose this to you. So that's personalized in this sense, and it's also personalized in the sense that the songs that are chosen there are different. So for my rainy day playlist, I'm going to have some U2 because I'm that age. I listen to U2. But for other people, rainy day means something else. All right, so that's also another good way to bring in discovery to users. And I wanted to say just a few words on why it works or how we try to make it work. I try to put that in one word, and I came up with data and algorithms about it. So it's not really one word, but let's put it like that. So the type of data that we have is, of course, data about the users, about our listeners. So there's 72 million listeners, which every day give us like about 1,000 million data points to work with. A lot of stations, a lot of thumbs up and down, etc. So that's one thing. Another thing is music knowledge. That is knowing about music, knowing about what goes well with what. So it's really about here at the track level, we have actual humans, people who spend time annotating music at the track level at a very fine grain. I'm going to say a word about this next. And then we also have another thing that's very human in this is radio programming expertise, where we have human curation, people who are very knowledgeable in, say, electronic music or in whatever genre in reggae, and they would put up together some playlist or some radio stations, some mixtapes for our listeners. So that's all good and nice, but then what we do on top of that is use data science to try to scale up this knowledge to potentially millions of, tens of millions of tracks and hundreds of thousands of artists. So an example of what I mean by scaling up with data science is, for example, getting data from our music Genome Project, which I'm going to say a bit in a while, and train algorithms that are able then to apply this to the rest of the catalog. So the music Genome Project, that's So it's something that we started in actually 19 years ago. So it's about putting a very precise, up to like 400, 450 musical attributes on top of single tracks of music. So I'm going to try to play an example of this. I'm late already, but I'll try to do that fast, just to give an example. All right, let's play this. Someday he'll come along. So here it's an example of vocal traits. You can see that this song is very much light or breathy. That's the character of the voice, but not at all nasal or not at all gritty or gravely. For example, actually, I'm going to play another example. That's this one, or this one. So much more nasal. Well, this one, you recognize him. Very nasal. That's what he sounds like. So that's only 4 of the 450 traits that we have. Well, we have stuff about, is there a piano? How much of it? This kind of things. And we have millions of tracks annotated manually by our musical analysts to work with. And that's great because we can use that to recommend directly music that helps solve the cold start problem. Cold start being that when a track appears, an artist is unknown, wants to play on playlists and radio stations on Pandora. If you only rely on the wisdom of crowds, and if you only rely on collaborative filtering and on how other people like this artist or this song, it's not going to work. It's not there. But if you use the actual music description of that artist or that song, then that helps. All right. So we also have, once we have all this data, like I exemplify it as a personalized playlist or the radio stations or the mixtapes that our creators put together, then another discovery question, another problem is how do you so you have all that great content, but how do you put it in front of the users? So we're also working on this, trying to bring discoverability of this content directly into the listening experience. So it's very much trying to sound like radio, like the terrestrial radio. So if you have a Radiohead, you're listening to some Radiohead, then maybe you're gonna hear a voice telling you, well, that's Radiohead. Maybe you will want to listen to Tom York next. If you want, please click here. So this kind of things. And we also get message directly from the artist to the user while they are listening to the content. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I want to say today. Just one last slide, trying to look at music discovery today and tomorrow. So today we see that the innovation in streaming is very it's wild. I mean, everything is being defined, like what we mean by music access, mixing, discovery, and browsing, and rediscovery, and consumption in one single media is still to be defined. But in this redefinition of the music experience, one thing is central is discovery and rediscovery. Rediscovery being bringing to the user something that they might know, but they wouldn't go and get it by themselves directly. You have to kind of surface it to them. And here what's important is not only the what you recommend, what you bring as something to discover, but almost as important or maybe more important is the how. Kind of what is the vehicle you use for that? Is it going to be a playlist? Is it going to be something in stream that you say to the user? Is it a radio station? And then personalization or even hyper-personalization seems to be a clear trend, as well as contextualization, bringing the right content at the right time to the user. And tomorrow, more content, of course, like podcasts, news, ads, interacting not only with your computer and your phone, but of course with voice in a very natural way. And then one last point is that I just talked about music consumption and the part of the user or the listener. That's being disrupted by this innovation, but there's lots of stuff that are being disrupted too. The whole of the music industry, really, like creation, monitoring of rights, marketing, monetization, and pretty much everything that's before the listener. So that's it. That's what I had to say for today.
Perfect timing as well. Thank you very much, Fabien. And do we know if or when Pandora is coming to Europe?
I know that we will come to Europe. We really want to do that. The when, I can't really say.
OK, well, we'll have to keep our ears open to hear more on that one then. OK, finally, before we move on to our discussion, we've got Marco from Jukedeck. Now, Jukedeck's maybe a bit of an outlier, I guess, on this panel, because we're talking here not just about music discovery, but actually AI-powered music generation. So tell us a bit more about that, Marco. What do you guys do?
So yeah, as Victoria mentioned, I'm Marco from Jukedeck. I'm a senior engineer and machine learning researcher. And well, the space that we fit in is not exactly the space of music discovery for listening, but rather the space of music discovery for content creation. So for people who actually need stock audio for fitting soundtracks over videos, for example, or any other product that might need an audio backing track. So we're a startup based in London. We do music generation using AI and machine learning. Our first product, like our front-end product, is called Make. It's a web interface where people can request music tracks. You just need to define certain settings when you access the website, and our system will generate a new track for you. And we're also very keen and involved in researching and innovating the field of machine learning research in this space. So yes, because we are talking about discovery, our take on it is slightly different. So we don't actually discover music that has already been created, which is, let's say, the normal understanding of what discovery means. In music, it normally means that you will find the best track that you want from someone who's already written it, especially in the case of stock audio. But despite the incredibly sophisticated systems that allow you to do this, sometimes you just can't find what you want. If you have a video that is a certain length, you might not find a track that actually fits exactly that length, or that synchronizes exactly at the right time when there's a surprising event happening. So effectively, what you have to do in the end of the day is invent something new, is make a new track that actually fits exactly what you want. So this is where we fit in. This is a screenshot of just the front page of our website. What you can define here are genres and styles. There's an instrumentation option. But the most interesting part is probably the time features that are quite highly customizable. You can select a duration of a track in seconds, up to 5 minutes, and a synchronization point, which can be precise to the millisecond, actually. And so because these features can be highly customizable, you can fit it exactly over something that you want a soundtrack for. The music generated is always unique, so it's a fully probabilistic system. So every time a new track is generated, it's never been heard before. It's a completely new one. And the music is also royalty-free. One of the models that we offer the music through is it can be downloaded for free as long as the company is credited for in the video, like video credits or whatever. Or it can be purchased for a very small amount for not giving credit, or it can also be bought for full copyright access for if you really want the track, you really like it, and you want to use it for anything else, modify it, use it for commercial reasons, then you can buy the full copyright. I'm going to be very adventurous here and try to see if a demo works. It does not. OK, never mind. It doesn't matter. It's not. I think it's fine, but let's give it 1 second. And maybe not. And yes, OK, we are there. Cool. So this is a good example of how you could use it. This is a travel video and sort of advertisement for Turkey. And this person has used a Jukedeck track to use as a soundtrack for their video. Internet seems to be a bit slow, so I mean, that's a general idea anyway. I'll have more musical examples later anyway. So that being said, we are a company of musicians. We all have a musical background of different varieties. Some of us are classical musicians, some of us are electronic producers. But we're very keen on using AI as a musician's tool as well. So we've had collaborations with artists One particular one, which was quite recent, was with Entra. It's a group of South Korean musicians who used our music to compose their own tracks on top. We gave them access to a more complex API than what you can find on the website, actually, and which we're going to be releasing soon. And essentially they use the MIDI generations or audio generations to make their own music around and build it on top. And we are also keen on building more interactive tools for musicians so that it's not only the end user that can use this, but also someone who's more musically aware, like someone who wants to use these tools for more musical purposes. We are keen to give access to our API, which is already being used at the Sónar Innovation Challenge, just over there, and also expand the musical editing capabilities of our system so that people can edit tracks on the website to a finer degree and with more customization. All our technology is, at the end of the day, based on artificial intelligence, and the composition side of it in particular is driven by machine learning. Now, why machine learning? Well, there is a wave of research in this field. We launched as the first company that actually did music generation for commercial purposes, and we had to research a lot of novel aspects of this field to be able to build something that actually can generate music effectively. And it also has some aspects of music information retrieval, which is not necessarily machine learning always, but it's a very interesting field in music in general. But machine learning offers an advantage over handcrafted theories for mainly 3 reasons. When you're handcrafting an algorithm to generate music, you have to find a trade-off between making it very simple and hence very limited, or making it incredibly complex to try and capture as many aspects as you can, but then it becomes essentially impossible to use, hence the small image there. Another aspect of music generation, obviously that's not music, but it highlights the point of patterns. Something that comes quite intuitive to people, which is, well, to musicians in particular and to composers, is the idea of repeating and transforming and modifying patterns as one is writing a piece, so that there's an overall musical idea that is constantly transformed. This is very difficult to encode in an algorithm, however. It is something that machine learning algorithms can capture, but as a handwritten one, it's very difficult to do. And lastly, probably the most complex one is incorporating musical influences inside your music generation. Even if you have an incredibly complex algorithm that can generate music quite well, it's never going to be able to capture the idea of composing like Mozart, say. One way that you could do it is having Mozart next to you, telling you what to do, but that's normally not going to happen. So the other way that you can do this is by training machine learning on pieces that have a particular stylistic characteristic that humans might perceive, but it is not encodable in code, and they might be able to abstract some of these features out and actually generate music that is in a particular style or with a particular folk tradition influence. So this is to fit basically our focus, which is to generate something that is customizable, catchy, and also novel every time. The great advantage of a machine learning system is that also it's probabilistic. Every time you run a generative model, it gives you something new. Exactly, something new. We're also very happy to announce that we got our first paper accepted for publication. So we're going to be presenting a paper at ISMIR. This is part of our drive to participate in the research community. Obviously, being a company, we need to be aware of not talking too much about the technology, but at the same time, we're very keen to push forward the development of the field and collaborate with other people in it. This is a very quickly evolving field. So as I said, we launched as a company in 2012, officially put out the first product in 2015. But ever since, there's been a lot of interest in the field, a lot of research groups that have been adding their own expertise to the field, other companies that are sort of presenting themselves in a similar context. So to keep ourselves ahead of other players, we need to keep innovating our music. So just to give a quick example, this is a track that we generated at the very early stage of our system. It was mostly algorithmic. At the time, it sounded amazing. We were all incredibly happy about what we were doing. But if you listen to it, you can probably tell it's quite algorithmic. And it gets boring kind of after a little bit. And the rhythm is quite repetitive, and it's obviously it obviously has an algorithmic part to it. So more recently, we released with a few producers that we had in the company and expanding the team, we were able to release new styles, which were sort of more interesting from a human perspective, just better to listen to. So this is an example of a piano piece that we had more recently on the website. Which is it's a bit more of a human piece. It sounds a bit more listenable to, something that people might be happier to listen. And well, with the most recent expansion of the team, we managed to start releasing a lot more styles more quickly. We have better producer tooling, and our engineers can work a lot faster. So we were able to produce quite a few new styles lately that have been going on up on the website regularly. So we have a few new ones every month. And this is an example of a cinematic track, a cinematic action that recently came out. It takes a little bit to start. Just wait for the turn. Okay, so yeah, that's an example of the latest version of the music that we have on our system. So as I mentioned before, yes, the future things that we are really interested in doing is developing more interactive products for musicians to use, release more and more styles on the website. Hopefully, eventually you will find the style that you really want. They are curated all by our producers, so it takes a little bit of time to build each one of them because they need to be good. But now we're producing them a lot faster, and also always improve our composition and production systems so that the music that comes out of our system is always better. Just as a small aside, before I conclude, we're always on the lookout for really nice pieces of music. We often do QA internally, so we have to listen to a lot of it. This is a really good example of sort of beautiful piece of music that comes out sometimes. Okay, I think that's enough. But yeah, that's a good example of something that sometimes we get and it just sounds beautiful. Well, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Okay, great to hear from all of our speakers. Thank you very much. Actually, before we dive right into the discussion, I just wanted to ask you a bit more about the technology and the machine learning aspect there, Marco. Where did you get the data from originally? What are you training your machine learning algorithms on so that they can produce things like what we just heard?
So we have proprietary data that was composed in-house. So we have, being a company of musicians, we can exploit our musical knowledge. So there's a few of us that have composed music for our system. For research purposes, we use sometimes open source datasets. We recently released a version of the Nottingham dataset. That is quite a commonly used one in this field. It's folk music, but it's quite a large dataset, and it's useful for these kind of experiments. But what we have on the front-end product, however, it's all based on music composed in-house. And in fact, we're keen on having, we just started collaborations with musicians so that we can get more data to compose and at the same time promote them in our system.
Cool. Great. OK, so we've heard 3 very different, sometimes similar approaches to music discovery, recommendation, curation, generation. And there's lots to talk about here. To start, I'd like to raise the question, really, about finding the balance between algorithms and AI versus humans, because it seems to me that all of you mentioned both in your presentations. So, what are the algorithms good for, and where do they stop being useful? Maybe Bandcamp, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do not come from a technical background, as will become clear very rapidly. So excuse my lack of vocabulary on stuff on that score. But I think, from our side, we've tried to make it as human and natural as possible. And like I showed those examples of how people discover stuff, it's all based on what your fellow music fans are doing and what the artists are doing. And what we want to recreate is that feeling of, when you hear a piece of music and you think, oh, I can't wait to play this to such and such. And the feeling you get when someone plays you something that they think you'll like. So it's trying to kind of recreate that in the digital world. So yeah, I think for us that's always going to remain at the core of it. Yeah.
Excuse me. And I think for us on the editorial side, it gets tricky too, because some of the things we're covering are so far off the map that I don't know if an algorithm at this point would be able to catch a lot of that stuff. I mean, possibly could. So yeah, I mean, we're really reliant on people to go exploring and discovering things, and also catching scenes really early on.
Fabien?
At Pandora, we really rely on having good data given by human that we can learn on, that we can build algorithm on, right? So we'd say, like, humans do, at the scale that they can do, and then algorithms come and take over, and they really, they really suck all that knowledge and try to. So you could see it like this, but there's also the other way around, which is that sometimes, the algorithms kind of inform or give insights to the humans too. Like, humans come with their own biases. Algorithms have biases, that's for sure. But it's different biases. So if people, curators, for as great as they do their job, they might, very well be into their thing. And if they see some recommendations given by an algorithm, and they're like, okay, maybe, and they kind of give them some other idea where they can explore, and at the end say, well, no. But at least they try. Or seriously, you get this kind of back and forth between both. That's what I see in my work. But yeah.
And what about you, Marco, with your AI-generated tracks, as they were? Where do the humans fit in with them? Do they just provide the data and then leave it to the robots, or?
No, our objective is to have something that, yes, exploits AI, but effectively is an augmentation of musicians, so that musicians can always interact with it to make better music. Well, first of all, there's a human component to building these algorithms, as you said, the composition side, but also quite a lot of all the styles that we have are human curated. So a lot of the decisions that end up making a musical style are based on human decisions. That's why we have human producers. But also, in our view, the AI component is really just a tool for musicians to use to make better music. Right now, it allows on our website, it allows people to generate music, people who are not musically trained, to be able to compose pieces of music without much knowledge. But also, as I mentioned, we're planning to do something that actually helps musicians use AI for their own purposes.
So you're not trying to replace the artist?
Absolutely not. We are all artists and musicians in the company, actually, so that's definitely very far away from our plans.
Well, we'll see, shall we? And talking about recommendation in particular, which is obviously kind of a key facet of all streaming services or digital music services these days, the word personalization was mentioned quite a lot, and personalizing recommendations and things like that. How personalized do you have to get? Is it the case that everyone is a special snowflake with their very own music taste, or can you kind of categorize people into rough groups? How do you approach that to give people music recommendations that are relevant to them?
I think it gets weird, not that everybody's their own special snowflake, but I think it gets weird when people, especially the people who use Bandcamp, have such a broad set of tastes that it's harder to recommend. So one of the reasons why I like the way that we do recommendations is I'm following a ton of other people on Bandcamp, and that can be anything from people who buy extreme black metal to hip hop to dance music to like experimental electronic music. And all I have to see is one thing in their collection, like, oh, they bought that Earth Eater record. I love Earth Eater. Follow. And then at the end of every day, I just go through my feed, and it's based on their taste and people who I trust and people who like the same thing as me, not the same style and genre, but other albums that I do. And I've just found I end up spending a lot of money that way. Like it's a lot more reliable and kind of nails the quirkiness of, I mean, not just my taste and the people who use the site in general who have, and so, I don't know. I don't think it needs to be hyper-personalized to every specific person, but I think if you enjoy a broad range of music, there's something about the personal connection of people who also enjoy a broad range of music pointing you in the right direction that has worked for me.
Yeah, I think also what I think is good is offering choice to fans. So if you just like a particular artist and you want to come on our site and buy it and then tap out, that's fine. You can do that. Equally, if you want to take a dive in and find more stuff, the option is there for you. One of the things I didn't mention in the presentation is when you go to a page for any release on the site, there's the pack shot at the top, and underneath there's a bunch of little thumbnails, which all correspond, little thumbnail images that correspond to other fans that have bought that release. And you can click on that and go and see what their collection looks like. And so it's just a fun way of, as you would way back when you go into a record shop and you find a record you like and you see what else is in that section. It's the same thing. You don't have to do that, but if you're curious, which is we find that a lot of our fans are very curious, you can go and find all kinds of crazy stuff you never knew existed.
And how do you continue to surprise people? Like, is it possible for your recommendation engines, however they're done, to get too good, and you end up with sort of a bit of a homogenous collection of music that you really like, but you never hear something that's maybe out of your comfort zone or something that you wouldn't have necessarily chosen to listen to? Is that something that you think about and that you try to kind of introduce people to new things as well as what you know they're going to like?
Yeah, I guess there's something about this, but probably you too. I mean, I'm torn on that and on this personalization versus not. I mean, I don't know. Like you could have, of course, if you go like on one end and serves the same thing, super highly popular to everybody, only Drake for everybody, and that's it. That's all you get. That's bad. But if you go on the other end of the spectrum, it's bad too. I mean, if everybody is such a special snowflake that they don't mix together and there's no snow at the end, it's like silos and there's kind of no culture at the end. So I don't know. We try to do. It's definitely something we think about and we experiment with. But there's no clear solution to that so far. Try to be in the middle, and also respect the fact that not only you have to please the listener, but you also have to make sure that we're kind of part of an ecosystem with the music producers, with the artists, and of course, if we only play Drake, then more money comes in. But we also want to be be part of this ecosystem and help the working class artists to also have their chance and play. So that means targeting the right people. So some personalization is good, definitely, for everybody.
That's an interesting point there you mentioned about artists, because obviously the decisions that you guys make can make or break an artist's career effectively. It can affect their livelihood, whether people are finding out about them or not. So how do you keep things fair while still, pleasing your users? You're also giving artists a fair shot.
I think where we keep it fair is kind of in a slightly separate bit to this, which is that we allow, so every time you buy something on Bandcamp, you're then following that, or you can choose to follow that artist. The artist can then directly contact you through our app and message you and tell you about upcoming shows. And you can even target messages by location and how much fans have spent and stuff like that. So what we're trying to do is give the power back to the artists. That's not our data, that's theirs they're their fans, not ours. And so that's where we're trying to make it fairer, and they can actually build a career themselves over a period of time. We also, because most of the time we're dealing direct with artists and we only take 10 or 15% cut of the sales, it means there's a lot of money going back to them. Added to that is, those of you who've bought something on Bandcamp, you'll see that quite often it gives you a minimum price, and you can choose to pay more if you want to. And one of the really amazing stats that comes out of that, 40% of the time fans choose to pay more than the minimum, which means that the average price spent on an album is 1.5 times the asking price, which is kind of mind-blowing on the face of it. When you can go and listen to the whole history of recorded music for free, we're finding there are fans out there who not only want to pay, but want to pay more than they have to, because they understand that being an independent artist is tough. And a lot of people, this is their side hustle. It's not the backstage area access and the limo to the airport. It's being dumped out on the street with all your equipment at 3 in the morning and having to get 2 buses home. So we're really trying to reward the DIY artists while at the same time being a good platform for those who are a bit more developed. So there is, that democratization is really, really important.
And Fabien, how do you do that? Because presumably, the more well-known artists are going to end up on those playlists more often than, someone who's just put out their first record and hasn't got as much buzz about them yet.
Right. Well, we try to play as much thing as possible. I mean, don't quote me on that stat because I haven't looked at it, but I think we play maybe 80 to 85% of all our catalog every month. So that's, of course, Drake plays much more than Belaco or other super small artists or something. Sorry for Belaco, but I didn't mean that. Yeah, so we try to play a lot of things, and we try different ways. It's really about experimentation. If you're very much into if you're very much into punk and only listen to The Clash, then every once in a while we're going to throw at you something that you've never heard, and that's a very obscure band doing punk, and let's see how it goes. That's one way. We do a lot of ways like this. We experiment really very much. Yeah.
Great. And Marco, I feel like you've given us a bit of a glimpse of the future of, a whole new realm of music, tracks that have never been heard before by anyone else, no back catalogue, just new every time. And it's great to see the examples that you showed us of this music being used to soundtrack videos and things like that. How good do you think this kind of generated music can be? Could it be as good as an individual artist at some point? Could this be something that people choose to listen to as they might choose to listen to Drake?
Well, I'd say for the current state of the technology, it's definitely not there yet. One can listen to quite a few examples of even the state-of-the-art generative models. They're never nearly as good as a well-curated musical genius or any musician really who can write a part and has musical sort of human creativity added to it. I think they're getting better and better at covering a specific area of music, which is something where maybe human creativity is less important, but volume is very important, because a system like this allows you to generate a lot of tracks. If you're interested in a great amount of volume, then that's very useful. I think one of the great features that one can exploit these algorithms with is given a human-composed piece, it can be modified. Something I'm sure people have seen it everywhere, style transfer on images. That's something that can be done on music as well, perhaps. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a scope for these algorithms to be used in the music generation that eventually will go into people's ears, things that people will actually want to listen to. But I wouldn't say they will replace artists, rather than actually help them make the music more interesting. You could be, for example, use it to make music for piano that is just not playable by a pianist. something for 15 fingers, for example.
Excellent. OK, we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to throw it out to the audience if we've got any audience questions. I don't know, do we have a microphone available for questions in the audience somewhere? Yes? Oh, it's on its way. Perfect. There's a hand up right in the middle here. Let's go to this gentleman first.
I have a question for Marco. How do you track the music once it's downloaded to know that it's being used for what it was thought it was going to be used?
So we check YouTube for credits given. Generally, that part of the system is based on trust. So if someone downloads a track for free, we trust that they will give us credit for it. We found, sort of statistically, that does happen. So we know that over 50,000 videos have used our music on YouTube. We also know how many have been downloaded, obviously, through our own statistics. But yeah, otherwise, I'd say mostly it's just based on trust. We hope that people will give us credit, essentially.
Thank you.
Next question. Don't be shy. Oh, right around the corner over here.
Hi, yes, my question is addressed to everybody in the panel. And I work in the live music industry, mainly in concerts. And I'm wondering, how is artificial intelligence and all this machine learning going to affect the selection and curation in the live entertainment business? For example, for music curation in festivals like Sónar.
Interesting question. Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, I can improvise a bit on that. I think it's going to change it a lot. It's changing it a lot already. You see different music services, music streaming services, putting on the side of the other playlists or radios, and that people can listen to on their phone or whatever, and have those artists, or actually maybe choose those playlists and the artists in those playlists to then make a festival together. That wouldn't have happened before, or the other way around. Like a festival happens, and then from there you build a product that's in the sense of a playlist. But so you see that happening already, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more innovation in this realm too. I mean, that's for sure.
I think I don't know what will happen. But I think there's also one thing with application of technology is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that's something that's, I love technology. I'm glued to this stupid phone in front of me 24 hours a day. And, I enjoy using all of the benefits that come from that. But I think sometimes there's space to, old ways sometimes are better. I think also one thing that we sometimes underestimate in the industry as a whole is that fans are smart. People aren't stupid. They can see through things that are that are fake, essentially. And I think technology's obviously coming on leaps and bounds, and there's who knows what will come in the next few years. But I think specifically to your question about live music, I think you can tell when there's a well-curated program like there is here, and when it's something that's put together for a brand and kind of thrown together with SoundCloud stats or whatever it is to make the decisions. So yeah, I personally hope it's experts in the field such as yourself can continue to do that for as long as possible.
Maybe you could have some kind of tool where you can put in, my headline is going to be LCD sound system. Maybe you should consider these as warmer packs.
Exactly, maybe that's it.
Any other questions from the audience? Down in the front here.
Yeah, this one for Marco. If I understood well, you're training your system with existing commercial music. Is that right?
No.
You're not using.
It's not like none of the music that we use is commercial. It's all composed in-house, so it's all ours. Like we composed it.
Is that because you have looked into the legal implications of using commercial music, or for another reason?
Yes, we looked into it, and we know it's. For machine learning algorithms, it's still a legal gray area, but it's definitely not worth taking any risks. So we can't basically confidently use any commercial music in our product, really.
Thank you.
Interesting question. guy in the white T-shirt at the back row there. Oh, sorry, did we have a question down here? Well, as you've got the microphone, you go first.
Are you looking at using blockchain to track your product and to retain your royalties or to have your credit? Or what is your future business model from a profit standpoint?
Well, we're not at the moment. We're not planning to use any blockchain, as far as I know. I guess that question would be better directed to someone a bit higher up. I'm more on like the low-end technical stuff. But I guess our main business is to strike deals with companies for usage of our API. So obviously, the single end user is an interesting field to get into, but it's not particularly profitable. So we are in the works for opening up our API to both corporate and non-corporate users, and also releasing new products that can raise interest and can actually be marketed properly, like AI interactive products that can be more interesting and more high-end, essentially.
Fantastic. Have we got over at the back there?
That's a topic you already talked about, but I wanted to ask about how do you think we'll be able to see how streamers' behaviors, the people who stream music, how they behave on those streaming services, how we will be able to understand it a little bit better in a way that I think before we had all that music in one place, it was a lot about genres because you would go to a record store which had only rock music or another with dance music. But with this abundance of music, you realize that it's not too much about the genre, it's about if the music is good or not. So I could be listening to Led Zeppelin and then go to Korn and then Slipknot, or it could be really different. So in what way could you actually tag a song that will allow that streamer to discover something other than one genre?
I mean, I think that's one of the ways that following people on Bandcamp works to that benefit because I'm following. I like a bunch of different musical genres, and I'm following a bunch of people who like wildly different musical genres. So I could be following one person who I'm like, this is where I get my metal recommendations from. And then I'm following somebody else because I like experimental electronic music, and that's where I get those recommendations from seeing what he or she bought. So, yeah, I mean, the way that we do recommendations is kind of tailored to that because there's no such thing as genre anymore. You can just follow a bunch of people based on their record collection. And you can even sort of tell, I don't know, not to get too far in the weeds, but you can sort of tell characteristics about the way somebody listens to music based on the kinds of records that they buy. And so it's not like, oh, we both like electronic music. It's like, oh, we both seem to like, no matter what genre of music, me and this person seem to both like things that are a little bit rough around the edges. Or we both like things that are a little dissonant, whether it's noise or metal or whatever. So, it allows you to follow people who, regardless of the genre, there's certain characteristics of all kinds of music that you like the same, whether it's really gritty, rough around the edges hip hop, or whether it's like shredded nerve or something like that.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, on that point, I think like genres do exist. I mean, people still in this age, people still do identify themselves with this or that genre, and at the level of at least, also very, very fine-grained genres like this very small thing that only two people know about. But like I think the social connection, the like of which you have on Bandcamp is really tells a lot about people and more than genre maybe. Yeah.
I think we might have time for one last question. Who to choose? Down in the front here, let's go with you. Sorry, everyone else. You can try and grab the speakers after they get off stage to put your questions to them.
All right. So I work for a digital distributor. So basically, it's quite fun because like 3 or 4 years ago, at least here in Spain, everyone wanted to be highlighted on iTunes. Now they want to be in playlists. So basically, I have a few questions, but one is, why do you think the digital platforms are not like social networks? Because I remember like Spotify was like, they had messengers, like messages, also like social tools, and not anymore. I don't know Pandora. I just know about that you recently launched like $14.99 family plan, I think, if I'm not wrong. But Bandcamp is still a bit social because you follow, but still there is no interaction, I think, if I'm...
That's correct. There's interaction between artists and labels and fans, but not fan to fan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
apart from just buying stuff.
Yeah. So my question is, why do you think digital platforms are not using like social networks like Facebook? Because Facebook introduced now like live sync, which I think is quite fun because it's similar to Snapchat. So all the young people like Gen Z, they are really interacting with that. So I'm just curious, why do you think platforms are not using that?
Okay, quickly, because we are over time. But yeah, why do you think? Why
I
the
think
separation?
they are. I mean, Bandcamp is a good example of social connections actually working in the music realm. But in general, why it's not so much more? Why you don't see? Why you don't see a lot more of that? I think the short answer is it's a tough nut to crack. I think it's difficult to get the social connections right. Don't put too much in front of people, but the right amount, it's very tough.
Yeah, I think
difficult.
You can see how many social networks we know that have come and gone. As you say, it's a specialization, and I think probably most of us have got our work cut out trying to master our own tiny part of it without trying to do other things.
So good idea, difficult to pull off. All right. Well, thank you ever so much, everyone, for joining us. I hope you found the discussion interesting and entertaining. Do stick around. Try and speak to all of our speakers afterwards. Are you guys hanging around for a bit? Sorry, I've just volunteered you. And enjoy the rest of your festival.
Thanks.